Heretic!
Darktide. The hyped-up Big Fish patented co-op horde shooter came out a few months ago along with the spew of other games and media thrown at Warhammer fans nearing a new edition. In this particularly grimy corner of the 40k universe, you play as a wrongfully convicted member of the Imperial regime, forced to perform as a human sandbag in the fight against chaos. The weight of saving Atoma Prime is plopped on your shoulders, be they big or small. It doesn't really matter as long as you don't have any spiky bits poking out. As such, regular shipments of you and the boys will be launched into the nearest bunghole of a city, Hive Tertium, where you'll be mowing down anyone with a mild cough, a vital strategy deployed due to the presence of plague-ridden Nurgle worshippers. If any of that made sense to you, then I have terrible news. That means you're a Warhammer fan. For now, I'll quietly showcase what it means to load up this game as a freshly hatched reject. Darktide launched with 4 classes. In the current patch we've got 4 classes, which makes my job a tad easier really, so thank you Fat Shark. Say, hypothetically, after choosing one of these peeps you made it through the prologue, watched Zola and her pals shout the lyrics to an AI-generated Imagine Dragons song and stumbled your way into the hub area. Your gateway to some old-fashioned heretic purging has been opened. If you are a new player then you won't be able to do much with the stations at this point anyway, except spend money on microtransactions.
Got the urge to splurge?
No.
Rolling over to the fabled mission terminal with whatever half-rendered abomination your computer has ordained to render will give you the choice of beginning a match in your desired difficulty. The Morning Star, the big floating cathedral you're standing on, runs on RNG, which means it'll lob a variety of modifiers and maps your way. To cater the zealot population, objectives remain real simple. Press some buttons, hack a few things here and there, show 1000 demons to the light of the Emperor for the first time, but most importantly, shoot, slash and slap the legion of traitor-turned lunatics infecting the city. These hordes of enemies are mostly comprised of toe-sniffing hooligans, with each difficulty increasing your chances to meet some of the more intimidating baddies Tertium has to offer. Once they start piling up, it can be a problem for even the most experienced operative. Teamwork is highly encouraged with the toughness shield system and disabler tactics that can only be remedied with a helping hand, and the fact that you're probably going to die a horrible, unceremonious death if you don't group up. To disrupt and displace organized teams, the heretics will send Atoma's best, a combination of elite or specialist units that spawn periodically. Quite a few of these will be grim reflections of your own team's arsenal, with the more weird and wacky ones barreling in with sound cues, much like the horde shooters from ages past. Occasionally bosses will also spawn to serve as a sort of speed bump when things seem like they're going too smoothly, to quite literally throw you off. If they aren't busy sneezing on you or ripping you a new carcass, then you probably found a demon host sniveling on the ground. Just like a real Warhammer convention, your objective is to avoid these creatures unless you have the tools to deal with them. One last thing to watch out for when choosing a mission are the modifiers. There aren't many, but accidentally going into certain modifiers without realizing can catch you off guard in a not so fun way. Most of them increase the amount of enemies there are in each game, especially high intensity or shock troop, which have you fighting off the entire planet.
Double the guards, double the weapons, double everything.
And just like that, you're partially versed in the basics of Darktide. But maybe you don't know how or who to play as. I'm an Ogrin main, so I still don't know how to play, but I'll do my best to make sense of things for you.
Something horrible in the dark. Me.
At its base, Darktide thrives as the type of game where enemies throw themselves at you en masse, giving you opportunities to use melee and range weapons throughout the mission. It doesn't matter what weapons or classes you run if you can't dodge a Poxwalker. So getting these basics down is important if you don't want to be the first to awkwardly flop on the ground. Basics even this bloke could grasp. To explain what Ogrins do best, I'm going to make a new character. We can skip all the fancy background stuff because a real Oggy doesn't remember where he came from. Now that Grog has a name, he can no longer be killed. Or that's at least the impression I get after reading a solid 0.2% of the existing 40k lore. Unfortunately for the enemies facing our Ogrin today, they're not named characters. Grog is a simple bloke. He likes smashing things and making space for his team. If you're a brave Oggy, you can opt in for the Bull Butcher program, turning you into a meat blender against mixed hordes. Pair the mouse one spam with a good blessing, and after a while you might notice that the most lethal creature on Tertium isn't the manifestation of chaos, it's you swinging a meat cleaver around like a toddler who didn't get an iPad for Christmas. There's not a single thing on this planet capable of eating through the wall of chunk, and I know that for a fact, since Nurgle never had the audacity to call any of these poor buggers names.
Someone's looking for a pumpkin.
Fuck.
Although the Ogrin flourishes in the carnage of melee combat, part of his viability stems from a small selection of idiot-proof guns. As long as you aren't pointing the weapon at the floor, you're probably doing something right. The more I play the big man, the more I come to enjoy his ranged options. It's not like I have a choice, he has like 5 of them. Also, the big lad has got a built-in funny ragdoll generator in the form of a box. If, however, actual utility nades are more important to you than making heretics launch into the stratosphere, then maybe Zealot is for you. Zealot is similar, as he is quite a melee-centric character. What you want to do is use your powerful ability to close the gap between heretics and give them a taste of the Emperor's love. If you don't want to die during this process half the time, then it's very important that you combine Zealot's passive ability. Turbo Racist gains superpowers, a story I'm sure you've all heard far too often. There's quite a lot of these guys running around Tertium, and if you do decide to choose the man literally too xenophobic to die, your role is to get into the thick of things before the thick of things get into you. Screaming loudly gives a temporary boost to your range penetration and a crit melee hit in case something survives a 20kg bonk to the face. Using your ult can also be used to charge the front lines, the back lines, the demon host 20 meters away, and the forearms when your win button gets nerfed.
Emperor, guide my hand!
Maybe you'll play them long enough to hear the rarer voice lines where they admit a newfound affection for their comrades, immediately ruined 5 seconds later by an entire sermon on how abhumans don't have souls.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
I'm so used to playing Ogryn that as soon as Veteran's toughness bar breaks, I fold like a wet sock, and that's okay. No longer having a 400 HP safety net would be a bit of a shock to anyone. Veteran is susceptible to quick bursts of damage and pretty much nothing else. He's a powerhouse until the 3 rages creeping up behind him say so. Peak Veteran gameplay is the absence of special enemies because you one-shot them all through a 9-inch steel wall. If you like the idea of throwing your life away for the imperial armies of mankind, well then look somewhere else, because you're not part of the guard. You're effectively a prisoner doing work for some whack job we've never seen.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Giving the countless disease-ridden monstrosities a smack on the bum is fun, but it doesn't compare to seeing the 40k lore nerds frothing at the mouth when our no-name reject mag dumps a beast of Nargor and wins. For that reason, and that reason alone, the veteran class is worth a shot as an introduction to the game. Just, please, don't forget that you have a melee weapon. Remember that time you coughed in the grocery store checkout line during peak COVID and everyone kind of looked at you funny? Now imagine you do the same waiting for your daily ration of slop back on the Morningstar.
You'd be dead.
Psychos have to live with this kind of danger every second of their lives, leaving them with a very quirky personality and the Warhammer version of magic. The trade-off for their powers is an unstable connection to space hell. Before the Imperium blows off your noggin for talking to yourself, you'll be dancing around hordes and breaking the world record speedrun for a carpal tunnel diagnosis. Both deleting elites and erasing trash mobs from your monitor are doable, especially since Psycho's grenade slot is taken up by the ability to explode heretic heads at will. The other characters will occasionally voice their concern about having a walking time bomb on their team.
Can you tell me your name?
Let the war flow!
Let's just say some of the class personalities are lucky there isn't friendly fire. As for these personalities, who you can choose in character creation, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that the voice work is pretty darn good. Everyone is very quotable, and I don't mean in the Marvel quip way. You won't be hearing Facebook mums screaming for the Master of Mankind anytime soon, unless Henry Cavill shows up.
I can't read.
Like every 9-year-old British kid living within 40 miles of a Games Workshop store, I've already been indoctrinated into the world of Warhammer. The 40k universe is humongous, so obviously there's a ton to pull from. We aren't the main characters, far from it, but there was a story for Darktide promised, so here we go. The story we do see takes place in the first few hours of the game. Every few levels you get rewarded with a cutscene in which each member of the Morningstar cast will step in to say how much they don't like you. Our boss's right-hand man will then tell you, a suspected traitor, that there is a suspected traitor aboard the ship. After reaching a KD ratio of about 500 million to 0, they'll summon you to a room and tell you that the bad guy has been found.
The traitor has at last been identified.
Hey sir, that's an Ogryn. There's no way he could be relaying traitorous communication throughout the Hive City.
You know what? You're absolutely right.
Luckily, Rannick guesses correctly and shoots the right person, ending the prologue. And that's it. There's the story of Darktide. Apart from the already established context within the Warhammer 40k universe, then there's not much to go on. There are scraps of lore about a traitorous regiment in-game who you'll also be fighting half the time, but as far as we know, any plans for a major plot have been halted or even dumped by a dodgy launch, and this unfortunately is where my grievances for the game begin.
Hello?
Darktide is the type of game to boot you from a match and then have something on the loading screen like
To question is to doubt.
Right, I'm sorry.
It's the type of game that has you clicking a couple of buttons over and over again for a 5% damage increase.
Some days are fucked and cannot be unfucked.
Like Deep Rock, you're 2 steps away from sass being blasted in your ear at any given moment, but at least the dwarves aren't getting cock-teased about content 2 years away from release every few minutes. If you were following the hype leading up to release, you'd believe that we're getting a fully fledged plotline, and of course the notion of playing a new class every quarter.
That one didn't age quite so well.
I could moan much more about the colossal bollocking of potential Darktide has become, especially after its fancy CGI trailers and prestigious writer reveals. But honestly, hearing about it so often is not very entertaining. We're not at launch anymore, so how does Darktide look after 11 patches, 7 or so months after release? As someone who isn't familiar with Fat Shark's previous games, it's not a beacon of Warhammer 40k lore or the well-oiled content machine I was imagining in November. It is, however, the Poxwalker flying at Mach 10 off your screen, the booms of gothic organ synthesized madness, and gorgeous grimdark map design, along with the occasional funny voice line now and then. The player base might not have retained its Horde level launch player count, but there's plenty of folks enjoying the game. Despite all its problems and overpromises, if you do get hooked on the gameplay loop, then it's over for you and your free time. Which is why, as a distraction, I thought I'd make a video on Darktide when it's at its peak disinterest and just before the devs go on summer holidays. I hope very much that you enjoyed it as much as Ogrin enjoys bonking heretic skulls, and I'll see you in the next one.